All right, so I want you to watch this video from start to finish, and then try to convince me that this isn't child abuse.
The entire camp and everything we did, I just feel so much more connected to Israel.
So if your children won't be indoctrinated in Israel, the Zionists, they'll make sure the indoctrination comes to you. So did you know that Israeli soldiers, some fresh out of Gaza, are helping run summer camps for children in the United States? And I don't mean that metaphorically, literally, and since we're so close to summer, what better time to let you know? So these programs, they're backed by billionaire donors like Larry Ellison, the Adelson Foundation, Friends of the IDF. They're bringing IDF soldiers to camps in places like Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, Washington, D.C. Can someone explain why billionaires who are connected to a foreign government are funding programs where Israeli soldiers mentor American kids, your kids? And it goes even deeper than that. Some of these programs intentionally pair children with soldiers who have lost family members during the genocide in Gaza. So they create this emotional bond through grief and trauma, because when you emotionally connect a child to someone, that child becomes far more open to adopting their worldview. So this isn't just some cultural exchange, this is narrative building. They frame these camps as healing spaces for Israelis returning from war, while also providing war education for your children, the children attending these camps. So millions of dollars are being dumped into shaping how American children think about Israel, the IDF, Palestine, basically the conflict itself. And long before those kids are even old enough to critically examine any of it. And here's the part that parents should think about very carefully. Zionists, listen. Most of the curriculum and the ideological content isn't publicly available anywhere. You can't find anything that's being taught at these camps. So many of the parents, they're not even fully understanding what their children are actually being exposed to. So this is how influence works. It's not through force, it's through trust, emotion, identity, and repetition. Education can become indoctrination very quickly when it's tied to nationalism and war. And the fact that this is being done in America for the benefit of a foreign state should concern each and every one of you, regardless of your politics.
The world is changing. Sometimes it strikes us by surprise. Sometimes it's overwhelming. But there is one thing that throughout the years has never changed: our human need to feel a sense of belonging, be part of a community, and preserve our roots. In times of difficult challenges, we come together, strengthen our heritage that connects us wherever we are for so many generations. Friends of Israel Scouts, the Tzofim organization in North America, a place that thousands of children and teenagers call home. A place where children and teenagers say, "I'm proud of who I am."
I met a lot of my best friends in Tzofim, and it really gave me somewhere to feel like I belong.
We carry the same morals, and we're raised the same, and we have the same traditions and the same beliefs and the same love for basically our country.
Here I can just open up and be myself.
Israeli, American, Jewish, kind of all mixed together.
For over 40 years, the Tzofim in North America have been part of so many Jewish families through a variety of programs with more than 25 chapters. Each year, over 4,000 boys and girls experience weekly activities in Hebrew, improve their leadership skills, learn about Jewish heritage and Israeli culture, and deepen the connection to their community and the land of Israel.
Tzofim is really important because it brings us all together and it brings the community together.
She's just a different person now. She's happy, she's confident, she feels good about her Judaism, about being Jewish, about her connection to Israel.
It's just people that are like you, so it makes you feel at home.
I worked on my Hebrew. I used to not be able to speak at all, and now I can speak fluently. You wouldn't guess that I was born in America.
אנחנו רק מדברים בעברית, או משתדלים רק לדבר בעברית.
It's a big part of my life, and I'm even going to a Shnat Shirut, a service year next year in Israel.
I am planning on going back and for sure joining the Tzava, probably through Garin Tzabav.
We are deeply proud of our young adults who made a brave decision to make Aliyah and serve in the Israeli army as lone soldiers with Garin Sabar. Every year, more than 400 Garin Sabar lone soldiers continue to make the Zionist dream come true. Every summer, 500 teenagers travel to Israel with the Tzofim on various programs where they meet their Israeli peers. And together, they create memories and bond for life.
Being in Tzofim definitely made me realize there's a lot more in Israel than I thought.
Along the way, we learned to be leaders, and we learned to work better in teams, teamwork.
Like, I feel like we all just get each other in ways that others don't get.
I think it's really important. They don't live in Israel. I think it's an important thing to have that connection. They have networks from all over. Like my son, who is in Israel now in the Mechina, he's meeting up with people that are also doing Mechina, but they weren't in Tzofim in Arizona. They were Tzofim in New York or Tzofim in LA, and now he's hanging out with them on his weekends off.
I walk around and I feel loved. I feel like I have a place. I feel like I belong.
Anytime I have a problem, I know they will be there to listen, and when they have a problem, I'll be there for them. And this mutual beneficial relationship is what makes the Scouts so special and so important for members like me.
They showed me what true friends are that I did not have before, and I was miserable before I met them.
You really feel like you're a family here. I know that ever since I started Tzofim, I've always felt a better connection to Israel, and I know that Tzofim has changed my life, and if I hadn't been in Tzofim, I probably wouldn't be doing Garin Tzabal or Tzava on its own.
I just want to say thank you so much for people who just put effort into helping this Shevet stick, because it really has changed me as a person, and it gave me friends, it made my Hebrew better, it just made me happier.
If Israel is in your heart, if our mission is important to you, join us and support today the Jewish generation of tomorrow.
Thank you so much for your support. I know I could tell you that you saved my kids, some of them. It means a lot. It really made my daughter who she is today. They're better kids, and it's because of this program. So thank you.
Hey guys, Demon Under here. Okay, so call me crazy, but this Zionist youth camp reminds me exactly of Hitler's youth. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on here, but it seems like the roles are reversed. And, yeah, so anyway, take care. May God bless you guys all. Bye-bye.
Every year, more than 400 Garin Sabar lone soldiers continue to make the Zionist dream come true. Make the Zionist dream come true. Make the Zionist dream come true.
What is Greater Israel? This recently came up after this article in one of the main English-language Israeli newspapers, the Jerusalem Post, went viral. The article was called, "Is Lebanon Part of Israel's Promised Territory?" and it explains the origins of a concept called Greater Israel. The article reads, "In the last generation, the term Greater Israel has come to the forefront. It's sometimes used in political or religious discussions about the ideal or future borders of Israel, often in the context of messianic or Zionist aspirations. Some interpret it as a call for the reestablishment of Israel's biblical borders. However, the concept varies in meaning, ranging from symbolic or spiritual interpretations to literal geographic claims." Greater Israel has been a topic of discussion, especially after Israel's attacks in Lebanon, which revealed a deeper desire within Israel's extreme right to actually begin Jewish settlement in Lebanon. The so-called Israeli Movement for Settlement in southern Lebanon posted a map of the sites of prospective Jewish settlements with all the Arabic names replaced with Hebrew names. This ideology has had a resurgence lately, largely because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu formed his coalition government with Messianic Zionist parties. There's a whole documentary by TRT about this called Holy Redemption: Stealing Palestinian Land, and it's worth watching, but this video will focus on the history of the concept. The article in the Jerusalem Post was taken down, but you can read it by using an internet archive site like archive.org, and the article says, quote, "Greater Israel refers to the concept of the biblical boundaries of the land of Israel as promised to the Jewish people in various parts of the Torah. It's often associated with the land described in the covenant with Abraham, which stretches from the river of Egypt to the Prat River." And then it quotes the Torah, "When Hashem, God, promised Abraham the land of Israel, the verse says, 'On that day, God made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your descendants I have given this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates,' which is Mesopotamia or modern-day Iraq." While it has religious origins, the Greater Israel concept is referenced from the very first days of the Zionist movement. The Zionist movement was the movement of European Jews who wanted Jews in Europe to move to Palestine to create a Jewish state. One of the first mentions of Greater Israel is written in the founder of the Zionist movement, Theodor Herzl's diary in 1898, just 1 year after the first Zionist Congress. On page 711 of his diary, Herzl describes the geographic proposal for a hypothetical Jewish state and says that the area demanded will be from the Brook of Egypt to the Euphrates. He then goes on to describe how this area will be slowly transferred from an Arab majority to a Jewish majority. The Zionist movement first presented this map showing what a future Jewish state would look like at the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, the conference where the World War I surrender terms were being signed. The empires that had won the war, Britain, France, Italy, and Japan, were dividing up the colonies of the losers, the Ottoman and German empires. One of the territories the Ottoman Empire lost was this area here, the Levant. The Levant is the heart of 3,000 years of Arab civilization. For centuries, they lived under the Ottoman Empire, but the empire's collapse during World War I brought hope that Arabs might finally be able to govern themselves. Instead of that, however, the Allied powers took over and created entirely new countries based on completely arbitrary boundaries. The map of the Middle East we know today was literally drawn with pencils and straight edges at a meeting at 10 Downing Street in London, which is the British Prime Minister's office, by two British and French diplomats named Mark Sykes and Francois Picot. Under the all-too-familiar colonial guise of protecting minorities, the European powers drew states that intentionally divided the region along the lines of sect. This is deeply ironic because Arabs are often accused of being sectarian, that religious and ethnic conflict is just part of their culture. But these distinctions between Christians and Muslims, Shia and Sunni, Arab and Kurd, were really exploited and exaggerated by the British and French, not Arabs. They literally tried to bake conflict into these countries, a legacy which still hasn't gone away today. This divide and conquer strategy is the textbook strategy of colonialism and can be observed in just about every single colonial situation in history. Part of the British strategy in Palestine was to hand over their mandate to the pro-Western, pro-colonial Zionist movement. The Paris Peace Conference of 1919, where the British and French were dividing up the spoils of World War I, is where the Zionist movement first presented its proposal for the borders of a future Jewish state. The map presented by then leading Zionist activist and future first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, was drawn by the World Zionist Organization and included the East Bank, which is the eastern side of the Jordan River, part of southern Lebanon, and the Egyptian Sinai. The map was rejected by Britain and France, and what followed was a long debate over what the borders of the future Jewish state should be. One of the leading proponents of expansive settlement was this guy, Zev Jabotinsky, a leader of the hard-right revisionist wing of the Zionist movement. At the 1931 Zionist Congress, Jabotinsky actually split the Zionist movement over the question of Transjordan being included in a future Jewish state because he felt it was such a crucial aspect. This is notable because Jabotinsky is considered the ideological forefather of the Likud party, the party of Benjamin Netanyahu. His most famous writing, The Iron Wall, is an essay he wrote in 1923 that argued that there would never be a voluntary agreement over European settlement in Palestine because, in his own words, there's never been a historical instance of a colonial project getting consent from the native population. He argued the only way a Jewish state could be established is if Jewish settlers create an iron wall which the natives couldn't breach. The essay is only 7 pages long, and it's definitely worth reading. Israel declares independence in 1948, but in its entire history, Israel's never actually defined its own borders. Israel's borders have changed almost constantly in its 70-year history because it's always conquering or trying to conquer more land. In 1948, Israel expelled Palestinians into neighboring countries to create a Jewish majority state. In 1967, Israel fought the Six-Day War. The popular Israeli narrative of this war is that all of the Arab governments woke up one day and randomly attacked Israel because they hate Jews. But the truth is, Israel provoked a war with the Arab states intentionally. This was openly admitted by several high-level Israeli generals after the war. Matthew Peled, one of the Israeli commanders in the Six-Day War, told the Israeli newspaper Haaretz the thesis that the danger of genocide was hanging over us in June 1967 and that Israel was fighting for its physical existence is only a bluff, which was born and developed after the war. In the 1967 war, Israel conquers all of historic Palestine, the Egyptian Sinai, and the Syrian Golan Heights, more than doubling its territory. The UN does force Israel to return the Sinai, but Israel refuses to leave the Syrian Golan Heights, which is still under Israeli occupation today. One of the major turning points for Israel is its 1982 invasion of Lebanon. It was Israel's first attempt at a major occupation of a country outside of historic Palestine. But even before Israel's invasion, it had been using Christian sects in Lebanon as proxies to fight the Palestinian liberation fighters in the south of the country. Lebanese Christian fascists famously served as the trigger pullers in the Israeli-orchestrated Sabra and Shatila massacres, where 3,000 Palestinian refugees were executed over the course of a day and a half in what the UN General Assembly condemned as an act of genocide. One of the visions for Israel's long-term strategic outlook to come out of this invasion was laid out by an aide to the Israeli Minister of Defense at the time, Ariel Sharon. The strategy paper, called A Strategy for Israel in the 1980s, which was published by the World Zionist Organization's ideological journal Kivunim, or Directions in Hebrew, explains in thorough detail how Israel should exploit the sectarian divisions in other Arab countries as they did in Lebanon in a larger strategy to fracture the Arab world. It says, quote, "The Muslim Arab world is built like a temporary house of cards, put together by foreigners without the wishes and desires of the inhabitants having been taken into account. It was arbitrarily divided into 19 states, all made of combinations of minorities and ethnic groups which are hostile to one another, so that every Arab Muslim state nowadays faces ethnic social destruction from within, and in some, a civil war is already raging." Then it goes on to say, Syria is fundamentally no different from Lebanon. The real civil war taking place nowadays between the Sunni majority and the Shia Alawite ruling minority testifies to the severity of the domestic trouble. Iraq is, once again, no different in essence from its neighbors, although its majority is Shia and the ruling minority is Sunni. It then lays out its strategy for what it calls the Eastern Front. The dissolution of Syria and Iraq later on into ethnically or religiously unique areas such as in Lebanon is Israel's primary target. In the long run, while the dissolution of the military power of those states serves as the primary short-term target, Syria will fall apart in accordance with its ethnic and religious structure. This state of affairs will be the guarantee for peace and security in the area in the long run, meaning for Israel, and that aim is already within our reach today. If you observe the strategy followed by Benjamin Netanyahu throughout his career, it follows this strategy almost exactly. In 2002, he urged Congress to invade Iraq over the weapons of mass destruction it never had. The US occupation plunged Iraq into a bloody sectarian civil war by manipulating balances between the Shia and Sunni Muslims. In Syria, Israel held an official position of neutrality, but later admitted to arming the mostly Sunni rebels while simultaneously carrying out regular attacks against the government, which was controlled by Shia Alawites, in a situation where neutrality actually meant for Israel undermining both sides in a civil war. And of course, in Lebanon today, we see Israel collectively punishing the Lebanese people and then telling non-Muslims to blame Muslims for Israeli airstrikes. My question for you is, how long will you tolerate this? Israel has killed over 40,000 people in Gaza, and if you include non-combat deaths, that number is conservatively estimated to be around 200,000. Immediately after committing the most well-documented attempt to wipe out an entire city in history, Israel turns around and commits an attack that turns civilian mobile devices into a theater of war, kills around 1,000 people in the span of 2 or 3 days, and then assassinates the very person likely to trigger a regional war. Israel has proven at every single juncture in the last year that it is the greatest threat to world peace right now. I've heard a lot of people describe this as the cause of our time. And while there are very few moments in history where there's a system of government that's so inhumane and so repugnant that the world unites against it, it has happened. And if Israel's actions don't merit that, then what does? The passage of a UN resolution calling for an arms embargo against Israel was a good start, but it actually needs to be enforced. And I'll just say on a parting note that the cartoonish caricature of the Middle East as a region that's just hopelessly condemned to 1,000-year-old ethnic and religious conflicts is one of the greatest lies that's ever been perpetuated in the post-9/11 era. This narrative, which convinced millions of people that turmoil and conflict were intrinsic parts of Arab society, concealed the reality that these were really intrinsic parts of British and French colonial strategy and US world domination. After the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, an American fact-finding mission was created to survey the opinions of the people of the Levant to see what kind of future government they wanted. Taken in 1919, the King Crane Commission surveyed 1,520 villages in Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Transjordan. Of the 2.5 million Muslims, 500,000 Christians, 100,000 Jews, and 100,000 Druze that were surveyed, a full 80% of respondents voted for this option here. Greater Syria, which was the concept for a unified pan-Arab state that would have combined Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, and Transjordan into one country. Greater Syria obviously never came into fruition because it would have been unacceptable to the colonial powers of the time, but it's interesting to think back on given what we know today. The whole thesis of that 1982 Israeli strategy memo was premised on the idea that Pan-Arabism was dead. But if anything, the last year has shown us that Pan-Arabism is still highly relevant not just to the question of Palestine, but the region as a whole. For the last 30 years, Israel's been normalizing its presence in the region by making peace agreements with Arab states one by one, thereby isolating the issue of Palestine and creating a permanent beachhead for US and Israeli imperialism. But the last year not only shattered this possibility, it showed definitively that the mass of Arab people still considered the Palestinian cause an Arab cause and a cause of their own, and refused to see it abandoned like their leaders have. It's not surprising that the 1982 memo was contingent on the absence of Arab unity. Unity has always spelled the downfall of empires, and Israel isn't likely to be an exception.
And the secular nation state of Israel. There seems to be no real recollection of how this star became attributed to David. There is no mention of this Star of David in biblical scripture, and has only been used to represent the Jews since the Middle Ages. Before then, the menorah was the symbol of Jewish identity. The star was known as the Seal of Solomon, the great king. Some believe that God inscribed this seal on a ring for Solomon himself. Others believe this is simply an invention by medieval Arabic writers. Still others believe that the seal was invented even earlier by the Hellenistic Jews around 3rd century Egypt. Legend says the seal was given to Solomon by one of his wives, an Egyptian, who was daughter of the Pharaoh. This marriage would create an alliance between Israel and Egypt. The ring was believed to invoke and command demons. The use of this symbol began to spring up in 17th century Germany, originally only representing the Zionist community. In Islam, the one who possesses this seal will become the beast of the earth and will return to punish the unbelievers. 6 points, 6 outer triangles, a 6-sided hexagon, the seal of Solomon. Perhaps the reason that the Star of David, the Israelite king, whose line would produce Jesus of Nazareth, is never mentioned in the Bible is because it does not exist, or at least by that name. But the Bible does appear to address another star, whose worship parallels that of Moloch, whose symbol is a star, the same star.
Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch,
than the star of your god, Remphan. Figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. Remphan was believed to be an Assyrian god of the planet Saturn, Moloch, Satan.